Hello. Okay. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for coming. For those of you on Zoom, the camera is not working quite yet, so just hold on tight. But yeah, for everyone here, welcome. I'm excited about this because this is my professor, Dr. Regina Chow Trammell. We I was her student from 2019 to 2021, and we've just been keeping in touch since and become colleagues and friends. So um, today, if obviously you may have gotten the flyer, but it's about burnout and Christian mindfulness, which we think is an important topic just because of how our culture keeps us moving so fast. And our church community has been discussing a lot about ways to kind of go against the grain in terms of finding ways to walk away from distractions and building um, habits that allow us to spend more time with God. So yeah, we want to talk about burnout. And this is basically Dr. Trammell's main research throughout her years. So she knows a lot about it, and how Christian mindfulness can be integrated into a lot of the healing from burnout, or even from like trauma, from depression, from anxiety. So, and she's also a practicing therapist as well. So a lot of things that she's doing. So maybe we can give a round of applause to Dr. Trammell. Thank you. That's okay. We welcome you. So yeah, go ahead.
And thanks to Sarita for the nice introduction. So I'm Dr. Regina Chow Trammell. Should I turn on the mic? Okay, that might be helpful. Testing, testing. Can you hear me? That's better. Okay, thank you. So yes, I am a professor. I've been at Zusa Pacific University at the Master of Social Work program for about 11 years now. I know I look 28, but so I started when I was 13, and I've been really enjoying it. So I teach a lot of the foundation courses and clinical courses, and one of my favorite courses to teach is group therapy, and Serena was a star student in that class, and a lot of, I think, just it being kind of appropriate for us to talk about group in terms of mindfulness, because it is AAPI month, it's also a mental health awareness month, and a lot of the way that we think about mental health is, kind of individualistic. So I want us to kind of move into kind of a mindfulness practice that honors our culture, honors our heritage, and honors our collective identity. So with that, there's not that many people here. Could we maybe get in a circle? Would that be okay? I'm gonna make you guys move, and while you move, I'm gonna tell a quick little story. You can kind of hear this play out, because there's a couple of exercises that I want us to be able to do. So what is burnout, right? When we think about burnout, let me just tell you a quick story. A long time ago, in a far away land, there lived a 30-year-old, and this person who juggled multiple roles, he or she was always on the go. A meal was a protein shake in the car. Weekends were filled with family visits and date nights and kids' soccer games. Our hero of this story would maybe at the end of a long day, maybe watch TV, scroll on TikTok, learn a couple TikTok dances, and she would also wake up in a panic, maybe around 3 a.m., right? And just not sure what happened, just have lots of thoughts about work, and maybe a small detail at work that our hero of the story would perseverate on. At 6 a.m., it was time to work out, then get in the shower, because our hero of the story wants to be of sound mind, body, and spirit, maybe devotions in the morning, right? And out the door she went to work. And the day was like a runaway train. She'd literally run, maybe take the train or drive on the 405, that's always fun. And right at work, log in, check the Slack channel, check the emails, get all the stuff done that he or she needed to, write furiously away, skip lunch. Lunch was maybe at the desk. And then onward through the afternoon, zooming by, not really mindful, right? Just working, working, working. This happened for weeks. This happened for months. This happened for years. Her kids got older. His work, he got promoted at work. All the good things were there. There was laughter. There was also tears, right? A journey of years and years of hard work and a journey of years and years of dedicated family time, maybe church volunteer work. But one day, our heroine did not have any energy to wake up anymore. It just happened out of the blue. Or maybe our hero had insomnia and woke up at 3 a.m. for weeks and months and couldn't sleep again. And noticed that they were tired and hungry, not just hungry, but hangry, right? And so out of focus, out of sorts, this is what burnout looks like, right? This is a story that's not far, far away. It might be close to home. And a lot of us wonder, right, especially thinking about going into the pandemic and the kind of work that we've done through the pandemic on Zoom or multiple kind of tasks and roles, we're edging towards burnout, or we've gone through it and we're still in the midst of it. So I want to talk today about what burnout is and how our spiritual resources can be a helpful way to heal us. That it's not just one way of looking at mental health when we think about interventions, but that we are body, mind, and spirit. And as Christ followers, obviously, our bodies are an important part of that. And our bodies sometimes speak, especially as Asian American communities. I think paying attention to our bodies is in our DNA and our heritage and our traditions. However, we underutilize it when we think about mental health, and we underutilize the way our emotions play havoc with our bodies. So with that, let me just throw it out to the circle. Have you experienced burnout? What has that looked like for you? Is anyone brave enough to share? Or feel like you're on the edge? Like, am I burnt out? Not sure. Feel like you're going to be at the edge? Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I feel burned out days occasionally, and I was I was telling Tessa that there are days when I'll tell my husband Ken, like, I just want to quit work and retire, but I have kids to put through college, so I can't do that. But then I tell Tessa, like, I'm in my early 40s, so I have at least 20 more years to go. And I just can't imagine doing that.
Daunting.
And so, yeah, I'll have those feelings like I don't want to work anymore, but I feel like I can't quit. Yeah.
It's this double-edged sword, right? I know I need to rest. I know I need to maybe change something, but I have all these responsibilities and all these other people who are relying on me. Yeah, double whammy. Thank you for sharing. Anyone else? Are you Tessa?
Yeah, I was like, same thing, but I'm like, oh crap, I'm like even younger, so I have even more time. I'm extra screwed. But yeah, it's just this feeling of like, even when it's my time to rest, I don't feel like I can rest.
Yeah.
It's like,
Can't shut it down.
yeah, I can't shut it down. Or like, I will be on TikTok scrolling, and I feel like afterwards, I feel like not relaxed, you know? I feel like, oh, like how much time did I just waste? I feel so tired still. So it's like I'm not resting fully.
Yes.
And I don't know, it's hard to like get myself to do that because I feel like kind of like anxious when it's like downtime.
That's right.
Yeah.
Right. Just like our heroine, right? Watching TV, maybe scrolling on TikTok. We call that in mental health the numbing, right? We're not aware, we're not mindful of what we're doing. We're just trying to get that dopamine hit.
I'll literally be doing both. Like I'll have the TV on and I'll be on the couch with my phone.
Yeah.
'Cause I've got 2 screens and I'm like, what am I doing? Like I can't even focus on one.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Have you seen Ronnie Chang's stand-up? Where he's like, it's not just one screen,
No.
it's 2 screens, it's 3 screens, 4 screens. Yeah, anyways, yeah. Highly recommend Ronnie Chang. Thank you. So good. These are, I mean, it's not good. These are signs of burnout, right? And we might not be aware. Most of the time, I think a lot of folks who are in burnout aren't aware that they're in burnout, right? And they're pushing through, they're trudging through, they're kind of trying to just focus on what's ahead and accomplish that, and maybe there'll be relief, right? Focus on the other kind of mountaintop and then get there, and then there's more. And I think that's the problem with burnout. So when we think about burnout, we need to look at it multidimensionally. It's not just exhaustion. A lot of people think about it as like, I'm just worn out, I want to quit, right? It's also other things that are emotional, cynicism, detachment, lack of empathy, actually, lack of joy, a lot of, again, just kind of flat emotion as well. And so the problem with burnout is it's not like you're depressed and maybe you have a couple panic attacks or you have other milder sort of symptoms, but you can still function, right? You can work, you can parent, you can do all those things. That's the good news, right? You can still function, but the bad news is it's untreated and unrecognized, it's going to get worse. So again, when we think about burnout, we're also detaching from things that are life-giving to us. So as Christians, maybe your prayer life is suffering, or your ability to feel like God's presence is with you, or his love and care is with you because you're detached, you're emotionally numb. And you might be cynical. This is where I think a lot of folks who I think are deconstructing faith, I would actually put them in kind of a cynical category where they're maybe just have lost hope a little bit. And so deconstruction seems like an answer, but maybe not. Maybe that's not quite what we need to do. So when we think about why Christian mindfulness can be helpful with burnout, there's a lot of research. One thing I just want to give a shout out to Serena, because she has done a lot of work with me on research on pastors and burnout. And we know from the pandemic, pastors have been it's been really, really difficult for them, as well as other frontline workers, other essential workers. But mindfulness in the Christian stream can be really helpful in preventing burnout, identifying it and treating it. And the reason why is because it is holistic. It does touch on the body, mind, and soul. And so I want to talk about that, but are there ways, if you could talk with a partner maybe next to you, how do you sense when stress is accumulating? Maybe you could think about it in your body. Like, what I'd like to ask is, where in your body do you feel like stress starts accumulating? Is it do you start getting indigestion? Do you start getting headaches? Do you start getting chest pain? Could you talk with someone on your left or right, maybe pair up? And how do you notice stress accumulating in your body? Try to identify kind of a primary part of your body. So how many of you said in your head? Yeah, head. So, okay. Lots of headaches, maybe neck pain, sinus issues, yeah. Okay, how many of you said somewhere in the chest? Tightness. I mean, we could have lots of different areas. Tightness in the chest, you start feeling that constriction. The breathing starts getting shallower. You start to feel that the muscles, yeah. What were we saying, DJ? Shallow breathing, yes. How many of you said GI? Yeah. Can't poop. Maybe too much poop. Like it's like indigestion. It's okay. Like I grew up talking about poop and the quality of the poop, right? And so it's really, really important. These are really important signs. I think I would just say if that's something that we can do, and I just encourage you, even right now, if you're starting to, wherever your primary center is, if your head is tight or you notice that's an area, just go ahead and roll your neck for me a little bit. Just notice that and feel that muscle, maybe the crackle, snap, crackle, pops. Right? Notice that. If it's in your chest area, can you roll your shoulders, see how that feels? Yeah, I like to kind of pull my shoulders. Yeah. Maybe make it go across, do some movement, right? What would it look like to kind of expand your chest, allow the breath to get bigger? And just think about, as you're breathing and moving, your body. You know, that God said your body is a temple of the Holy Spirit, right? How do we take care of our bodies? How about your GI? Can you kind of move your hips around? Yeah, feel that. Maybe go in a little circle. My grandpa and grandma would walk around the hallways, or you know, the Asians like walk. We kind of bend down. We can stretch it out, right? I think movement is so important. And Serena and I were talking earlier about just how like intellectual you all are as a body. Is that okay? It's not a criticism. That's really great. There's a lot of intellectual gifts here. But I'd say sometimes when those of us who suffer burnout and we kind of overanalyze and over-intellectualize our symptoms, it might be helpful to use your body to help you work it out, to think it out. One of my favorite things to do when I feel very, very burnt out or stressed is to stretch out my hips. For women, we store our stress in our hips, and so I do a lot of yoga, and I go into pigeon or a happy baby, if you're familiar with that, to stretch out those hips. And those are really, really important ways that you can kind of work out the stress of your body. If stress, okay, so let me pose this to the group. If stress, right, okay, let me put it this way. God says, right, he's the Prince of Peace. What is the role of burnout in our lives? God said his kingdom on earth isn't his. However, is peace actually the reality of the real world? Like in some sense, is this world, can I use a movie analogy, like the Matrix, right? This isn't really real, that our stress and our experience of stress isn't real. If God is here in our midst and the kingdom of God is actually in our midst as Christ followers, then peace is actually more real than what we're experiencing. It's a little abstract, but I'll just let you think on that and contemplate that for a little bit. And so when we think about mindfulness, it's a practice that really actually comes from a Buddhist root, Buddhist religious thought. But for us as Christians, there's actually an ancient tradition that is not as well known because we are so cognitive in our faith sometimes. And so when we think about mindfulness, and many of you, how many of you have heard of mindfulness? Yeah, okay. The reason why you've heard about mindfulness, right, is because of this researcher named Jon Kabat-Zinn. He really brought Zen Buddhists, or what we call, Chan Buddhism from China, Zen Buddhism from Japan, and brought that to the West and operationalized mindfulness to the Western palate, so to speak. And so it has become kind of a very cognitive practice of like, how do you become aware of the present moment without judgment? And so there's some really important things about that operational definition. First of all, being present, right? Not thinking about what's going to happen the next day or what was in the past, but just this present moment. And without judgment, because sometimes our thoughts can flood in, and we might have thoughts that aren't so pretty, but the non-judgment piece really allows us to kind of look at the truth of our thoughts. Where does our mind go in the present moment? And the way I feel like what God has been teaching me in my own mindfulness practice and that I've researched and studied about is the practice of the presence of God. I've heard that your congregation does a lot of centering prayer, this kind of cataphatic prayer system that's sort of intentional, focus on a word, right? Focus on intention and allow God to speak, allow room for listening. There's another route that comes from more of an Orthodox tradition, apophatic prayers that are more about the mystery of God, the contemplation of mystery. And the one thing that I really enjoy about that kind of tradition is it's embodied. So a lot of the things that I'm making you do. So in the Orthodox Church, if you were to pray, you're going to bow and you're going to kiss an icon, or you're going to move throughout the service. You might be swaying and you might be moving throughout. And so you're worshiping God in that present moment with your body as well. And I think, again, in the Protestant Christian tradition, we're very much, coming from a place where we want to know God's word, right? Nothing wrong with that. Study God's word. But there's, maybe I would say, a balance of understanding how God is really present and can abide in us, in our bodies, in our minds, in our souls. So I offer this Christian mindfulness definition. It's about making time to turn our whole attention. So when I say whole attention, I'm not just thinking cognitive, right? I'm thinking our body, our mind, and our soul, whole attention to God, so that we can hear and abide in his voice above the chatter and stress of our lives. There's something transcendent about God's presence that helps us move us out of our stress, that helps us kind of transcend our present moment and really understand and embody peace in a new way. So the wonderful thing about that is maybe your mind isn't really working well in the morning unless you have coffee. That's me. Like, I need to have my coffee. It's not very mindful practice, but I have to. So I really can't start thinking very well about God's presence until I have my coffee. So, but that doesn't mean I can't move into kind of a body movement, right? That can help me understand God's presence. And for me, like I said, that sometimes it's stretching my hips or it's moving. Yeah, it's being able to kind of engage the body. The reason, what I love about our Christian faith is that we, take the bread and we drink the cup, right? This is an embodied kind of engagement of who God is. If he's incarnate, that we can engage the body as well. Or maybe it's soul work. It's nurturing the spirit. When we think about soul work, this is where I think, I'm going to get more into this, but where I think acts of service and just even our kind of collective identity can be really helpful for us as we think about relationships, as we think about love, we think about forgiveness. This kind of soul work could be a way that we enter into God's presence as well. And so Christian mindfulness, as we think about it, is paying attention, right? Paying attention with our whole self, all these different areas. And if we could do it in one, it'll help open us up to the other. If I'm drinking coffee and then my mind is improved, then I can go there a little bit in my body and have more activity. So any thoughts, just if you can share with a person next to you, what is the most accessible of this kind of triad? What do you think is the most accessible for you, to think about the practice of Christian mindfulness? Is it through your body and movement? Is it through your mind and cognition? Or is it nurturing the soul? What would work best for you? Do you mind sharing with each other? Think about that. It's kind of a first entryway, the most accessible way. So I hope you were able to kind of think about a good access point. One thing that I talk about in my book on Christian mindfulness is the Lord's Prayer, because I think there's all these elements in the Lord's Prayer, right? Give us this day our daily bread, right? Forgive us, that kind of soul work. Lead us not into temptation. And even the beginning of the prayer, right? Our Father who art in heaven, we have to kind of think about that and picture that. And so what I'd like to do right now is have you all even kind of enjoy a practice for a little bit. Some basic steps of mindfulness. So as you think about the most accessible point, just encourage you to do that now. We're going to start with a breath box, a modified box breath. We could turn that into a box prayer. Feel free to use this time to kind of pray if that's helpful for you. But what I'm asking you to do, and I'll lead you through the box prayer breath, we'll do a little bit both, how's that? Is to notice, okay, and observe your body, observe your thoughts, and observe kind of the soul, what is maybe God telling you about love or forgiveness, something like that, okay? So, and then the last thing that you want to make sure you do in any kind of basic steps of mindfulness is to kind of name your values. You know, what is that could be similar to the centering prayer work that you've done, like kind of name your intention, name the thing that you want to do. And then we're going to rehearse that healthy thought and pattern once you hear from God. So let's go ahead and, if you want, just get in a comfortable, seated, dignified position and get relaxed if you can. And if you want, open your eyes or close your eyes. It's up to you. It's no judgment here. And we're going to breathe in for 4 counts. We're going to hold that breath for 4 counts, and we're going to exhale for 4 counts. I'll count you in each time. We're going to do that for at least 4 times, okay? Just to get our parasympathetic body working, okay? Let's inhale together. Inhale, 2, 3, 4. Hold, 2, 3, 4. Exhale, 2, 3, 4. Inhale, 2, 3, 4. Hold, 2, 3, 4. Exhale, 2, 3, 4. Inhale, 2, 3, 4. Hold, 2, 3, 4. Exhale, 2, 3, 4. Inhale, 2, 3, 4. Hold, 2, 3, 4. Exhale, 2, 3, 4. Inhale, 2, 3, 4. Hold, 2, 3, 4. Exhale, 2, 3, 4. And keep breathing. Maybe at your own pace if that wasn't comfortable. And just notice right now your breath. That's all you have to do. There's nothing else that you need to do. Just notice your body. Notice your breath. Breathing, inhaling and exhaling. Try not to judge your breath. There's no right or wrong way to breathe, right? So just breathe. Observe where your thoughts are at for a minute. Am I here? Am I amongst my brothers and sisters, or am I somewhere else? Again, without judgment, it's okay where you're at. Just kind of try to bring your mind to here. If helpful, notice where your feet are at on the ground. If you're distracted, just come back to your feet and come back to your breath. Notice your head, notice your shoulders, notice your chest area. Notice your stomach and GI. Notice your hips and buttocks, your upper thighs, your knees, your calves, your ankles, and your feet. As you breathe in, could you breathe in God's peace and allow God's peace to enter into your thoughts and your mind, into your jaw, into your neck, into your chest, into your stomach every time you breathe in, into your hip joints, into the back of your legs, the front of your legs, your knees, your calves, your ankles, your feet, your toes. What color is God's peace as you breathe in? Just contemplate that. What temperature is God's peace? Can you breathe that in again into your thoughts, into the back of your throat, into to your neck and your shoulders, your arms, your elbows, your wrists, your hands. Could you receive God's peace? And in the body of Christ, we pass God's peace to each other. Can you pass God's peace to the person to the right, to the left of you? So as you breathe in, can you breathe in God's peace? And as you exhale, can you pass God's peace to the right and to the left of you? So you're going to inhale. And then exhale, send it out in a gesture of Christian love. Notice what you need. Observe what's happening in your mind and your emotion, your soul, and your body. Could you listen in to the Holy Spirit? You can receive God's peace and love. As you inhale, again, what does God's love look like in your breath? What color is it? When you send it out, what color is it? In the circle of shared love, as 2 or 3 are gathered, right? A cord of 3 is not easily broken. Can you receive the strength of God's love and peace amongst this body? You exhale, send it out again to each other, maybe to a different person in this room. A prayer of God's peace upon that person as a gift of grace. In your next inhale, just notice again, come back to who you are and what God is telling you. And listen in and just slowly open your eyes after a couple more breaths, 1 or 2. Great job, everyone. Thanks for doing that with me. Good work. Just notice how you feel in your body, in your soul, in your mind, in your thoughts. Have they slowed down? Has anything felt looser, or is there work to do? So I've done a couple studies on this kind of work. There's, like I said, Serena helped me with the first phase of a group of pastors. The other citation is about social workers who are also a stressed out kind of group of folks. And they listened to about, I had 12 modules. They probably listened to an average of like 8 to 10 modules of this kind of practice for about 20 minutes, 10 to 20 minutes, twice a week. So not a lot of time, right? The dosage, if you could think about that way, is only 10 minutes, twice a week. Just 10 minutes, twice a week. So you could break that up, maybe 5 minutes, a couple days, or 10 minutes, twice a week. And their heart, so the second one I'm referring to, which is Trammell Park Carlson, was we looked at their heart rate variability, which is a measure of emotional regulation that runs through the vagus nerve. There's some neuroscience that I'm not super fluent in. That's Gwynne Park's area. She's a cognitive psychologist. But we put portable heart rate variability monitors on them, and we took a look after 6 weeks of this kind of practice. And their emotional regulation improved, stress levels, self-reported stress levels decreased, and mindfulness state increased. These are preliminary results. You can't see them very well, but I want you to pay attention to the greens. So the pre on the left, the question is, hard to read. Mostly about physical exhaustion and emotional exhaustion. So this is a couple questions on a scale called the Copenhagen Burnout Inventory. You've probably heard about the Maslach Burnout Inventory, but actually I prefer the Copenhagen. It has different dimensions: personal burnout, work burnout, and then client burnout. So like maybe if you're a pastor, it's a congregant, or you're working with clients in a corporate job or whatever, then how burnt out do you feel about the other person? So pre, the exhaustion was pretty high. Orange and red is not good. And then on the post, 6 weeks for these pastors, the green gets bigger. Green is good. So after 6 weeks of mindfulness practice, just like we practiced, it got better. Same with the other one. I think it's something about working day. How do you feel often at the end of the work day? So again, pay attention to that green and orange and the red. The red has shrunk. The orange has gotten bigger. That means sometimes I feel a little bit better. Green is great. I feel really good. So there's some differences that a lot of folks feel and report feeling after a Christian mindfulness intervention, just like what you experienced. 10 minutes, twice a week, and that's all it is. That's all it takes. Kind of wanted to talk a little bit about burnout, just from, thinking about our lived experience as Asian Americans too, because I think we hold some other pieces that I think are really important for us to maybe wrestle with and to not ignore, right? To not detach from. So in this age, right, and during the pandemic, we saw a lot of anti-Asian hate. Every time I'm actually on Instagram, I follow a couple things. There's always some kind of incident that's happened in either New York or Orange County, LA. That's been happening on a regular basis. Racism is pervasive, right? That's one of the definitions of racism. It's pervasive. And so when we think about our history as people, I don't know how many of you are first generation, second generation, third generation even, or 1.5, but when I think about even just my own story, I was born here, I'm an ABC, and my parents came here. They were all about assimilation. I was talking to a friend, I learned Bopomofo. I don't know if anyone know how to do Bopo. That is not proven to be helpful, actually. Pinyin is actually good. My son just did AP Mandarin, and Pinyin is the best way to learn. So anyways, at least Mandarin. So assimilation was really real for a lot of us. And so there's a tension there about assimilation. How am I accepted? How am I going to be seen in this world? A lot of our parents or grandparents have carried that burden, right? And there's intergenerational messages we have about success and our value and worth that might be related, right, to assimilation, to this idea that we need to be American, first of all, because we don't want to be hurt and we want opportunity. Sacrifice, right? Filial piety, Confucius type of, philosophy about our identity and our role and the hierarchy of our, the reason why we need to work certain jobs or be able to provide for our elderly parents or grandparents. Even time, right? It's not just money, it's also time. There's a lot of time sacrifice. So many of you maybe after here having to go check on someone or have a Memorial Day, not of hot dogs and hamburgers on the beach, right? But of something else, maybe extended family. I think there's a lot of sacrifice and honoring of our choices. I don't know how many of you have seen that visual of, it was a meme that went around of, a grandparent saying, I love you to a father who said, I love you to a son, and kind of this intergenerational pattern of saying, I love you. That meme actually got flipped to talk about trauma and intergenerational trauma and how to break the cycle. And it was actually the grandfather saying, you're so stupid, to the father saying, you're so dumb, you're not capable, to the son trying to stop that cycle and saying, I love you, you're so wonderful, to his toddler child. And so when we think about kind of the sacrifices and the ways we've been motivated, how much of those messages are contributing to our burnout, right? How much of these are maybe even burnout being a survival strategy for us and our families, that we have to keep pushing, right? Because people are counting on us. These aren't necessarily bad, but it's another layer to understand that because we hold these, I wouldn't say burdens, but maybe burdens and opportunities, that we have to be that much more aware of how we're being effective and affected, and how we can then intervene earlier, and to pay attention to that, and to know that maybe we might be the first generation to have these skills, and that our previous parents, grandparents didn't have the skills. They didn't have the comforts to be able to practice mindfulness 10 minutes twice a week. I mean, really, I have a client right now whose parents were never home, who could not stop working, right? And that message has kept going generation after generation. But maybe part of the survival strategy and coming out of burnout is to do that inventory. What is happening in your body? What is happening in your mind? What is happening in your soul? Can you talk a little bit with a partner about overwork and perfectionism? Is overwork and perfectionism a part of your story? And we'll do that just for a minute. So talk to a partner really quick, and I will get to the next slide while you do that. I'll gather us back together just for sake of time. I think there's an opportunity for soul work here. So when we talked about our body, right, in Christian mindfulness, we talked about our thoughts. But I think there's some soul work that we could do around, especially, how many of you felt like it was okay to confess? Like I get perfectionistic, or I overwork in this area. Yeah, a lot of us, right? I think there's, again, a cultural piece to that, a heritage piece of that. And then what is the soul work? I think about the verse, trust in the Lord with all your heart, lean on in your own understanding, in all your ways acknowledge him, right? And he will make your path straight. And he will make our path straight. Sometimes I get lost if I'm overworking, or I'm thinking I'm hitting a perfection, maybe the AP test, or it was my son's high school graduation on Wednesday. These kids took 14 AP classes. Yeah, 14, and honestly, there were 5 valedictorians. I heard at Arcadia there's going to be like 30. I don't know. Yeah, when I was in school, it was good enough to do 5 AP classes. Now it's 13, you guys. Like I was a little sad, honestly, to see that and to hear that. And these kids, they looked happy, but the kind of work that they had to do to get there. And then they were also, right, doing 3 sports, literally. And then they were in charge of all these clubs that I don't even know what the heck those clubs were. They made the club, right? And then they got into UCLA. That's good, but that's what it takes to get into UCLA now, you guys, like 14 APs. But I just thought about, what is the soul work in that? What is the value of that person? Is that really God's plan for that person, right? This isn't a judgment. Maybe it is. It's just, how does that kind of overwork in a society? I'll just say, those kids in that school district, I went to 4 different, assemblies where they were kept, getting honored, which is great. I think they deserve it, but it was just like the message was really strong. Overwork, do every single thing, squeeze every piece of energy out of yourselves to hit this goal. For what? For what? Okay, great. I'm not denigrating those choices. I'm just saying, is this a mindful choice? Is this aligned body, mind, and soul? Is this how God designed us? Designed 16 and 15-year-olds, 17 and 18-year-olds. There's a verse I want to read. It says, you might know this. I praise you because I'm fearfully and wonderfully made. Your works are wonderful. I know that full well. So the psalmist is saying, I praise you, God, right? Because I am fearfully, wonderfully made. Your works, I as a person, I'm part of that work. I'm wonderful. I know that full well. What would it look like for you to know that full well? I think about how the first time I was walking with my dad through the parking lot of the Save-On in Igorok, and someone pulled their eyes at us and called us chink. And that was the first time where I felt shame about my eyes, about what my eyes look like. I was in Naperville, Illinois, coming home. I have kids at this point, and sorry, that's the hair. Going back to my car. It's a nice gym. It's a very, very nice gym. I can't afford a gym like that here in LA, but you can in Naperville. You don't spend as much money on housing. I came to my car and there was a ramen packet on my front windshield, just stuck there. No other cars. I was looking at, what the heck? What's happening? And there's a ramen packet on there. Someone saw me go in and put a ramen packet. That was a clear message about who I was. It was a very predominantly white suburb at the time. So I think about how wonderful I'm made, right, by God, and how wonderful we all are made, and how we think about God's workmanship. Again, how much of this sometimes is another layer where we try to overcorrect, right? Over-assimilate, overwork to fit in, to think about who we are. And how does that affect our mental health, right? And burnout. So I just want you don't have to talk to someone right now because we're going to do something together about that. But I just want you to think about, does my story resonate with you? Is there something that happened to you? Is there something way back there? Or did you witness someone saying something? Or have you ever had someone talk about your body or your skin color or your eyes? How does that affect your sense of how marvelous you are? And how much do you contemplate how you might think about assimilation and how you might think about your worth and your value? So I think one of the things that, as you kind of reflect, I just want to bring to you as we think about mental health and burnout and mindfulness, the reason why I love mindfulness and the reason why I think I came to it was I remember very distinctly my grandfather, my paternal grandfather, was a practicing Buddhist, and he would do the Mahayana stream prayer. He was a Pure Land Buddhist for Western translation, and he would do the Ami Tofu, Ami Tofu, Ami Tofu. And I just remember thinking how interesting that was. I came to the faith later on in life. Probably 10 years old is when I kind of think about this kind of mystical experience I had, and then 15 when I really felt like, okay, Jesus is who I'm following, and how it was so Western. It was just such a shift for me of thinking about my family practicing this Buddhist prayer out loud in front of everyone, no problem, versus prayer being so silent unless there's like one person leading it in kind of our, church context. And so one of the critiques I just didn't want to shy away from, that if you've heard of mindfulness, one of the things that have emerged now that mindfulness has been researched is that it's too individualistic. That actually it's really about you need to be so mindful that all these horrible things that happen to you shouldn't affect you. It's kind of like be in denial, essentially. And that there's actually systems of power or structures of injustice that there's no way one person practicing mindfulness can feel good about. And so I think that's a valid point. I think that's a valid critique of mindfulness, that really we're asking people to feel better when maybe your patient load is like impossible and you're literally running from patient to patient, right, in the workday. So how could you not burn out in a circumstance like that? And mindfulness isn't going to fix that. Maybe what should happen is really that our workplaces need to be a little bit more humane. So I wanted to throw that out there as a really important critique. And this is a 2022 research article that talks about this, right? It says recent critiques of mindfulness, particularly Western adaptation of its religious practices, posit that mindfulness has become part of a capitalistic and neoliberal practice that is commodified and centered on the individualistic lens of self-improvement, right? You can improve, you can transcend all these problems, right? So with that, I just thought, what would it look like, right, as kind of this idea that it's not individualistic, that actually we really need each other for God's peace, and actually we really need to think about those structures, that maybe in our practice of mindfulness, there could be something in our soul work that allows us to love other people better, to love them enough that it would actualize into some action. And so I just thought for this practice, I'd like you to turn to someone face to face, if you don't mind. And what I'd like you to do, this is going to be a little bit of a stretch, and it's going to feel weird. I apologize for it feeling weird. But first, I'd like you to look into each other's eyes. That always feels very, very vulnerable. You're going to giggle. It's okay to giggle. Just giggle mindfully. So take a deep breath together. I'd like you to synchronize your breaths. So there's this really interesting research that when you are calm and you can activate your parasympathetic system, that other person also is, their parasympathetic system is activated too, those calming. So could you try to be in a state of peace so that you can co-regulate with the person across from you so that they can feel at peace, right? So that's the job right now. Just as we breathe, if you would like, you know, center on God's peace, and can you pass God's peace to that person? What happens when you do this, and it's okay, there's no wrong, right? It might feel awkward, it's all right. There are things called mirror neurons, right? Where a monkey saw a human eating a banana, and so it got hungry. So as you think about peace, just know that that other person is also activated to think about peace as well, whatever peace means to you. So pass the peace to each other. Oh, that sounds strange, but regulate each other, breathe together. See if you can bring the temperature down in this room. Allow this place to be kind of a sacred, holy space of where God can be together, right? Just like that verse. When two or more are gathered. Doing great. And is there any soul work you want to do with this person, with you? Is there anything about what we've talked about, overwork or perfectionism, that you want to help work out? Could this person help you realize your value, your worth, and can you pass on that fearful and wonderfully made truth to the person across from you? Doing it. Oh, wonderful. So take 3 deep breaths together, in and out, to seal in this time. When you feel comfortable, you can turn back around, face each other in a circle when you're ready. Great job, everyone. You all are so wonderful that you're doing all this. I just want to thank you. I know it's so awkward. Thank you so much. So as we come to a close, I just wanted to offer, in my book, I talk about this tea drinking exercise. So we have tea in the back. We won't do it together, but what I'd like you to think about is kind of a practice of mindfulness, especially if you feel burnt out. This is something that I like to do. In my classrooms or before I see my clients, I always get a mug or cup of tea, and I hold the tea in the mug, and I think about God being like my hands across the mug. This is Him holding me. I'm being held. And then when I have the tea in there, I kind of smell the aroma of the tea. It's like Christ's aroma. I inhale Christ's aroma. It just helps me remember, okay, I'm not in this room, or I'm not in this stressful situation. I'm actually, Christ is with me. And then I drink the tea, and I notice it going down my throat, into my stomach. The warmth of that temperature is really soothing, and it's just thinking about, you know, God's grace. I'm actually, just as we take communion, I'm not trying to be sacrilegious, but it's like a practice of drinking in God's grace, allowing it to rest in my belly so that I can give it out again. And so I offer that to you as kind of this idea of you don't have to just be zenned out. You can do other things in mindfulness. That was just something that I do. Maybe you're washing the dishes and you're practicing a gratitude or practice of, you know, the water, washing your hands, whatever that is. Just find something that works for you. Again, just 10 minutes, twice a week. And I promise you, it will address the burnout. It will help you emotionally regulate. And that's good for your mental health. And if you can practice with each other and honor each other and help each other understand your value and the fearful, wonderfully made person that you are as each other, then I think we can collectively not need to burn ourselves out. And so with that, I just thank you so much for this time. And if there's any time for discussion, I have a couple discussion questions for you. These are just, some of it's a little review, but just even to get specific, I would love to hear, maybe could we do this in a bigger group? If it starts to get quiet, then I'll make you break out into smaller groups. How's that? So here's some discussion questions. Are there symptoms of burnout you've noticed? Where have you noticed it? When have you noticed it? And then I'd love to hear what you all experience. So whoever wants to answer any or all of those questions, are there commitments you want to make around reducing burnout as well?
I think I'll start actually, because I was not expecting this at all, but it just happened. But at first it was a little awkward with I don't know if it was awkward as pastor, but it was more of just like, oh, this is kind of silly and weird, because we'd never done this before. But then like by the end, I started crying. And I think it made me so emotional because I was like looking at someone that I deeply love and care for, and that I like remembered all the things and the ways that Ken has been there for me, and like all the hard times and just like the years of developing this relationship. So like I started crying at the end. Yeah.
That's so neat. You started noticing kind of what was back there in your memory. Like those are meaningful moments.
Yeah.
Right? They weren't just like, oh, Ken's walking in into this room. They were like these sacred times.
Yeah.
How do you think that might help you with burnout?
I think maybe like remembrance is such a helpful thing, kind of like gratitude, but I think in times when things are very stressful, or we feel like we want to give up, or we feel like we're not good enough, that there are kind of these anchors or what's it called? I guess these different milestones in your life, or what is that word? That you can kind of point back to. I guess if you're on that journey, like the anchors can kind of ground you. Yeah. Those memories ground me, or kind of help me remember like who I am, who my community is, who God is, because of some of those experiences, and I can still experience it and use those experiences to like continue forward, I guess.
I love that. That's great.
I think when you look at like someone in their eyes, it like reminds you we are connected to something so much larger, and you don't really remember that. I think when you're burnt out, I feel like it's just like all these like little like everyday things we forget. At least as Christians, we forget we're connected by something so much larger. And like, it's like we can see each other and go, hey, how's it going? But like, when you're just like looking at someone, like that's what Serena and I are like connected by something so much more larger. Part of it's our experiences, part of it's just like God holding us together. Yeah.
That's right. Thank you.
I think it was fun how, I think around like your second slide or so when you were talking about Christian mindfulness, my immediate reaction was like, oh, I can't put another thing in my plate.
Yeah.
Like how, like, and that like stress reaction of like, how do I like add this onto my like day, like my routine, like hit me. And I love how throughout today and reflecting on what we're actually going through at church right now through the messages, it reminded me about like practices I could do to create space and time. It's not like adding another thing, but trying to figure out if I want to add something, I should subtract stuff first. And thinking about making space for that because this is important to me. And then another thought I had was I love the body, mind, soul image that you had, the diagram you had, and it made me think a lot about how do I find, like the word was integration, like how do those aspects get integrated together and balanced together, and how does my faith play into that? Because I feel like oftentimes it's very easy for me to view those things as separate things, and also like mental health as separate from my faith and separate from like other things in life, and trying to view how those things can fit together like as a puzzle would fit together, or like more immersively, but like be at peace together with each other rather than like separate things I'm trying to like shove together when they don't quite fit. So that was like the image I got. And I also really love how we ended with a focus on community. I feel like that's something I've been learning a lot with this church, and really kind of taking, because mental health sounds so individualistic. It feels so personal, like a me thing, that's often not shared with other people, but bringing that up and just starting to think and ask questions about how is this an us thing? How is this a community thing? Was great. So thank you.
Thanks.
Is it okay if I ask a question?
Yeah.
So when Shiyang brought up with that triangle thing, I also really liked that, but then I was thinking about it, and I was like, okay, so the physical body one, I think about like doing yoga, or what you said with the tea, like drinking the tea and feeling it go down your throat. I'm like, oh, okay, I like those images. What are some examples of the other ones? It was like intellectual, and then, what was that third one? Spirit, right? Because I think about, it was like spirit/soul. And when I think about feeding my soul, it's like, oh, like when you eat delicious food because you want to enjoy life and you're feeding your soul. But I'm like, I don't know if that's like quite right for this one.
Hey, I'm all about eating as soul food. Like, that can be good. Absolutely. But it could be anything. I often think about love and forgiveness, right? Because what is God's commands to us, right? Love our neighbors as ourselves. Now, we have to love ourselves. I just always feel like we always think about the neighbor. I don't know if this is a wow for you, but it was a wow for me. Love your neighbor as yourself. As yourself. How much do you love yourself? How are you going to love your neighbor if you don't love yourself very well? So it doesn't have to be a selfish thing, but I think we love our neighbor better when we also love ourselves. And so I think sometimes when we're not integrated and those puzzle pieces are all over the place, we're actually not loving other people well either. And so sometimes a practice can be about, okay, am I ripping on my body today? Am I eating junk food? It could be eating. How am I loving on myself? Is scrolling, sorry to get personal, is scrolling on TikTok really loving myself right now? You know, but like, what does that look like for you? Is there a practice in that for you? Yoga is something like, but I work a lot on my eyeliner. I don't know if you could tell. This is a way I love myself. I kind of like my eyeliner. I get the best one. It's not the cheapest one. They never go on sale. And then I work the eyeliner, and it's an expression of how I love myself. I will do that whole staring in the eyes when I start to feel, especially if I'm in a very like predominantly white space, I start to do remembrance with my like family and the messages, and then just God, how I'm fearfully, wonderfully made. So that's, I guess, a taste of kind of at least a personal soul work that I do. Or maybe I'm like not liking someone too. That's also, I'm contemplating why I don't like them and trying to release that and forgive someone. That's also really hard to do, but that feels like work. That's soul work, and mindfulness does help me with that. I start to kind of, okay, what's happening? What's going on? Why am I feeling this way? So those are my two examples, but it could be lots of different things.
Oh, I liked that.
Yeah. Thank you, thank you, thank you. It took a long time today. Thank you. Your thoughts? Are there commitments? Are there things that anyone wants to make a commitment about?
So, I work a lot, and I started feeling it recently, and I told myself I have to like literally force myself to stop working
Yeah.
in order to like
hard.
slow down. So I submitted a leave of absence for one of my jobs.
Good.
So I'll be taking a couple weeks off, but that's still something, I guess.
That's awesome. That's so good, because I think what I want to say is sometimes we get on that anxiety sympathetic system. There is a dopamine effect when we're working and we're overworking, because we are achieving and things are feeling like they're getting done that would otherwise stress us out. But the problem with that is you really do have to, it's nice to step away. You not only gain perspective, but you kind of have some time to reset your body. And that's what I would say. If you could reset your body, drink more water, sleep, eat, all the things that any of your grandparents would have told you to do. Hopefully if they were healthy grandparents. Those kind of body things are so important. And then move into, could you do 10 minutes twice a week, for a few weeks and see how that feels?
Yeah, I've made this commitment like a while ago, just to meditate like 10 minutes, for at least 10 minutes a day. It's just very hard to be consistent.
It is.
Anything that requires discipline is pretty difficult. But I think in order to feel the difference that meditation can make, I think it actually requires discipline too. So if there's any suggestions for how we can be more disciplined when it comes to
Yeah.
meditation, that would be good.
I would love for you to think about it differently. Maybe not, it's a spiritual discipline, and I think discipline is such a loaded word. It's a practice. Could I offer that word? It's a practice. And a practice means you could do lots of different things to do that. So it's not just, okay, I need to sit and be mindful. That would stress me out. That's what you were reacting to. That actually stresses me out, personally. So I don't do that. I will do the tea. I might actually be mindful. I could just take a breath now and just be really present with you and be thinking about God right now as we're talking. And as you practice it, it moves you into a different bodily state. If it's a discipline, I promise you're not going to get those results in the same way. Does that make sense? Is it? Okay. No, you don't. I would highly recommend not doing that. I hate structure. I am not does that help? I do it because I have to, but I hate it. So you don't have to do it that way.
Yeah, I have an allergic reaction to the word discipline as well, and structure. So I use the word habit,
Yeah.
a little softer,
Habit.
more inviting,
Yeah.
and sometimes I'll even set a reminder.
That's right.
So I'm in the habit of checking my email and my text pretty regularly, so I can do a habit that's healthy. So when I went through burnout in 2017, I invited habits of healthiness, and that helped me get through and recover. It took me about 9 months, but during that time, it was just walking by faith and doing things that were healthy.
Yeah.
So like walking outside, even though I don't like nature by nature, but I knew it was healthy. And then I slowed down, even though I'm more in the habit of distracting myself, but I slowed down because I knew it was healthy. And eventually it healed my body and mind and soul. But one commitment, which I'm kind of allergic to the word too, but one new habit that my son Jeremiah and I will be doing is tea time.
Great.
And so I really appreciated the practice of tea and drinking, asking God, make it a prayer that God would fill us with His Spirit and also commune with us. He just brought a new
T-Set from Taiwan. He was there for vacation last week, so we're going to put that to use.
Nice. Thank you.
Yeah, I experienced burnout mostly. Well, first I experienced stress. There's everyday stress, and then it builds up in my shoulders. And so I know I'm getting to the point of burnout if I can't release the tension, even by doing like stretching or things like that, massage, right? Yeah, and when I think about what practices are helpful for me, I usually gravitate towards things with stillness and silence. But currently I find myself more, it's more helpful for me to listen to music in the morning to like try and, I don't know, approach the day with the right sort of expectations and hopefulness.
That's great.
And I also, my work week was really stressful, so I can't just do the stillness thing that usually works for me, so I'm just, I enjoy walking in nature. And so I think there's definitely room to experiment, I would suggest to everyone. You can find the sort of practices that work most of the time, but then sometimes other seasons of life call for other things. Yeah.
Thank you.
I was thinking of mindfulness in like the sense of a collective.
Yeah.
My family and I are going through a season of heavy grief. So it feels like pragmatism and all these things have to take the space before you. And I wonder what it's like as you're talking about, in the Western sense, mindfulness feeling like something that's individualistic, maybe to pour in before you can pour out. I'm wondering like culturally too, when collectivism or speaking for the other is seen as greater or more of the priority. When you make space for you, how do you do so when the other or things around you are requiring more space or more of an importance before you being able to be still?
Yeah, it's tough, right? And that's kind of that sacrifice piece. Could sacrifice also be a mindful practice? Could we intentionally make that even if you're craving, right, maybe more space, could you see sacrifice as a temporary mindfulness practice? And lament, I just want to say, lament is such a powerful kind of, I would say that could be a very mindful practice too. That maybe you can create space for a collective lament, and maybe that helps everyone. It serves everyone's needs, yourself and others. That sometimes people need a space to know how to grieve, and that our society doesn't always do that well. But right, I'm noticing you're wearing black. I mean, even just making it a practice to grieve, by the way you dress or the way you move or a different walk that you do or certain music that you listen to for a time while you're meeting other people or whatever that is. It could be really creative, I think. Is there a piece of art that you want to look at during this time and space that speaks to you? Is there a book you want to read in the in-between? I mean, I don't know if that makes sense, but I think you can, there's a realistic, pragmatic thing I get, but could you make space for yourself that it works for you, it symbolizes something for you to express your grief, and you can be mindful of it while not, still doing what you need to do? I don't know. Does that hit what you're asking, or? Okay.
I'm hearing like a sense of like honor to like grief or like lamenting, and then also like honoring the space that you create as well.
Right.
And it's not, because sometimes I think for me and maybe other people, like mindfulness or taking time to you is maybe forgetting or putting others past. But I think like reframing it, as you're saying, whether it's like habit instead of discipline, maybe like that honor is a better way to reframe it.
I love that. I haven't thought about that. Honor as part of a practice. I love that. That's great. Let everyone know how that goes. We can learn from you,
Work in progress.
Yeah. We all are. Any other last thoughts? How are we on time? Okay.
thank you all so much for being here. And thank you also, Regina. It was such a rich time. I feel like, personally, I was like, yeah, I don't know. I feel very filled right now. It was very life-giving to me. And I'm sure for our community as well. So if we could just give her a round of applause.
Thanks for including me.
I don't know if there's anything else that you want to say. If not, Ken will do a closing prayer.
Go for it.
Take a moment in silence, and then I'll close us in prayer. My gracious God, we give you thanks for this time to share with one another. A time to be able to sit with one another, to somehow, in many ways, to give our souls and spirits space to breathe. Thankful for Regina and guiding us through this time, helping remind us that at the heart of our faith is not simply some kind of intellectual exercise to believe certain truths, but we're reminded that you offer us peace, and that you tell us that you love us. These things that have very real import in our lives, even more real than all of the busyness that we so often get muddled in. And so we pray, God, that your Spirit would help us as we go back into often our very busy lives. May your Spirit meet our spirits in a place that helps us to receive these good gifts that you offer to us, that we may be able to connect to you in whatever commitments we've made to practice mindfulness, to remember that you are with us, that you love us, that you offer a peace that the world cannot understand. We so often forget these things. Maybe that is part of our burnout. So help us, God. Help us to receive these good gifts that you give us, that you would be able to restore our spirits, that we may find rest in you. Thank you, God, for all that you do for us. And pray all this in Christ's name. Amen.
So you can go ahead and enjoy some snacks, and there's also tea. And there's also a little it's a big QR code over there, just a little plug. It's her book, actually, on Christian mindfulness, and there's some, just more in-depth stuff like this and some practices. So if you want to buy the book, you can, just to support her and also just be more mindful. So thank you all for being here. No, it's okay. Yeah, we're all good.